Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to the Broadband Institute for having me. My name is Samanta Krishnapillai, and I founded the On Canada Project. If you haven't heard of us, that's fair. But I invite you to check us out on Instagram. It'll help make sense of everything I'm going to talk about. Some of our content is on this little graphic thingy, but we have like over 700 posts that are explainers, so please check them out. So the On Canada Project, or as I affectionately refer to it as, the little project that could, is a labor of love and hope. It is a page that frequently writes and gives words to the feelings that so many Black, Indigenous, and people of color experience. It is, at its core, a love letter to the future this country deserves. We are building the power to transform this country by bridging information gaps and inviting more people into conversations that too often are happening in spaces like this, spaces that are, quite frankly, a little siloed, predominantly white, and we're rejecting the status quo to find justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion through compassionate and conversational content that we share with over 145,000 Canadians. But before I get into the project and all that fun stuff, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Samanta. No, that's not a typo. It is indeed Samanta. There is no H. I was born in the early 90s, did my bachelor's and master's at Western University, learning about the health equity, social determinants of health, and public policy. I pair my education with my passion that stems from my lived experience as a first-generation Tamil Canadian and as someone who intentionally took time off in her mid-20s to focus on my mental well-being. My family and my ancestors are from Sri Lanka, a country and people that are recovering from intergenerational and ongoing trauma as a result of colonialism, first by the Dutch, then by the Portuguese, and then most recently by the British. My dad, Mohan, is a refugee, and my mom, Radhini, is an immigrant, and they both left Sri Lanka to come to Canada because they're a part of a minority community that face systemic violence from the government. I say all of this because as the first grandchild on both sides of my family to be born here, I have an immense gratitude for the opportunities this country has given me and my family. But at the same time, I'm fully informed and aware that this country is a settler colony that is deeply rooted in white supremacy to this day. So to put it simply, I love Canada, but it absolutely needs to do better. Our government, our institutions, our politicians, and our people, which is a large part of the reason why the project exists. When I founded this project in June of 2020, it was to bring an equity lens and create an accessible platform for knowledge sharing that can help set Canadians up for success during the pandemic. To be honest, the idea isn't that deep. Social media seemed like an important tool to fight back against COVID-19 misinformation because that's where millennials and Gen Z are. It also offered the opportunity to listen to what people needed to know and share information that could help address that and prevent them from feeling so overwhelmed that they start to feel like they need to shut down and reject it. And as a sidebar, of course Canadians are going to feel overwhelmed. This isn't something our public education system covered. And in the early days of the pandemic, the comm strategy was very much do this, not this. And you had to be really privileged to be able to follow it to a T. You had to have a home. You'd have to have multiple washrooms in case you had to isolate. You had to have your own bedroom, access to clean drinking water. It's not something everyone in this country was able to do. So if you couldn't follow the guidelines properly because you weren't as privileged, you were left in this sort of do I wing it and try to adapt these policies? Or do I just curl up and shut it down? And to continue on that tangent for a second, of course people were gonna feel overwhelmed. We were never taught about this. I think of myself, and my grandmother used to say when she was alive that I'm a fairly intelligent person. But if you started a conversation with me around finances or the economy, I'm tapping the hell out. I don't get it, I don't like it. I'm not convinced I need to know what a mortgage is because people keep telling me that millennials will never be able to afford one anyways. So, I would honestly rather hang out with Doug Ford for a week than to listen to someone explain the economy to me. I just can't. But that's not an option during a global pandemic, right? You can't have people be I'd rather hang out with Ford for a variety of reasons. It isn't in our best collective interest to have people shut down. Helping Canadians feel empowered by giving them the information they need to make informed choices felt like the best way to get us all through this. And like I said, if it's a financial crisis, I'm out. If we were going to war, I'm also out. I have zero upper body strength. But this particular crisis, I could help. I could plainly explain public health and public policy to people that invited them into it. So that's what we started doing. In June of 2020, we launched what was then the On COVID-19 project. I asked the internet for help, and over 300 volunteers applied in the first 2 weeks. Over the last couple of years, we've had over 650 unique volunteers come and go, sharing their brilliance with the project before moving on to something new. Slowly and steadily, we started to put out content that met people where they are, took an equity approach, and gave people tangible next steps. In case you missed it, I'm also a visible minority, and during the same time the project launched, the world was having a several centuries too late global reckoning around white supremacy. I remember friends and mentors saying to just sort of stick in your lane, just keep covering COVID-19, don't try to tackle all these other things, they're too sticky, they're too big. But if there's one thing millennials hate, it's people telling us how to define ourselves. So I decided to show up fully to the content and invite our team to do the same. And we started broadening the scope of our project because the inequities that existed before the pandemic would continue afterwards. As Audre Lorde says, we don't live single issue lives, so siloing these conversations don't make sense. It didn't feel true to our team that was really diverse. So the project would then evolve from talking about COVID to pretty much any issue that we thought millennials and Gen Z should be more informed about so they can engage in these conversations. With next set steps built into the conversation to give people abilities to be civically engaged and sort of be active citizens in their participation. 1 year into the project, in June of 2021, I was talking to my high school best friend, Gina Uppel, who's sitting over there, about, you guys haven't even heard why she's awesome yet. She is awesome, but about how to make this project sustainable long term. Up until then, well, actually this January, our whole team was working for free. I took a year off of life to do this project fully as a passion project. And together with Gina, we began transforming the project from a passion project into a social enterprise. So since June of 2021, we've worked with Kids Help Phone, Sid Lee, Maple Leaf Foods, Google News Initiative, UNHCR, the World Health Organization, Senate of Canada, Canada's credit unions, Meta, and I'm definitely forgetting some, but I think there was one about economics, and as I told you, rejected. So I can't remember now, but meanwhile, on the Instagram side of things, we hosted Justin Trudeau for an IG Live. We now have about 149,000 followers that are pretty much all Canadian, all millennials and Gen Z, with some Gen Xers sneaking in. It's okay, we invite everybody. And we began scaling this Instagram account to not just having these conversations on grid, but also off grid through our partnerships. And I think part of our success stems from using compassionate language, acknowledging that what we do know as a team and what we don't know, amplifying community resources, and giving people next steps to take action and protect themselves. We don't write content like we're better than people, because we're not. We talk to our community, which is what we refer to our audience and followers as, peers. We listen to their feedback. We own when we screw up, because of course we do, because mistakes are normal. We also unsubscribe from neutrality around human rights, which, to be honest, is just decentering whiteness and how we write, because we don't write for white comfort. We write to share our truth. We are, in my opinion, quite literally building the power to transform by building capacity in Canadians to participate in this conversation. And to be honest, it's happening by grounding ourselves in our values, building with the community, and by showing up in our unique, awkward, full selves to tables, to meetings, to conversations, to podiums. So before I leave you and hand it off to some of the other incredible people, I'll leave you with 3 sort of specifics around what I think we need to start doing to build the power to transform everywhere. First, we as individuals need to heal. You can't show up to this work without having processed your shit, and we all have it, especially communities dealing with intergenerational trauma and historic and ongoing oppression. I didn't know it at the time, but the years that I took and focused away from school to heal and and center myself were the best things that I ever did for myself. We can't go back to normal, so we need to disrupt the status quo. We need to challenge systems and structures that don't work for us. We have to dismantle white supremacy, and if your organization isn't talking about that, then you didn't understand the assignment. And lastly, we need to center marginalized voices, particularly Black, trans, and Indigenous folk, by creating space for marginalized communities to lead. Stop using us for your diversity clout. Without giving us decision-making power and paying us, you're not really involving us in it. We don't need a seat at the table. We need an opportunity to lead. Let us design and create spaces, invite us to challenge the status quo, support us, do business with us, hint, hint, and ask us to co-create with you. So I look forward to getting to know all of you over the next couple days. I've never been good at transitions, so I'm just gonna awkwardly leave the stage and thank all of you for your time and hope that you follow us.